Hey Carrie, back at it again. The last expansion we covered was the dungeon expansion, but now I wanted to start getting to the small one that's a little bit more on the important side. So we did the dungeon, as well as the city, but now we're going to cover the Lost Realms expansion, right here, which basically entails two separate expansions. The Nether Realm simply encompasses 3 alternate endings, 2 of which are revealed. And then, of course, the Nether Realms has its own Nether deck that is completely separate. Even though it's kind of like a cracked version of the Adventure deck, it's treated as its own separate deck that we can choose to use. Outside of the Netherrealm expansion comes the more important expansion, the Deep Realms expansion. So, the way that the Deep Realms is that it offers its own variety of markers that can go on your characters. Fit like such, so that way you can identify them, that they can be used at any time. But here's where things start to get interesting. In between the dungeon and the city is its own separate region that's set up like this. The way that the setup works is that we take 3 cards from the treasure deck from the dungeon. So we take 3 out of the 10 from the treasure chamber of his, and they sit on the throne room face up on this card. Then on the opposite side of the city is the Rat Queen right here. And she will get 2 random armory cards. These are 2 objects from the armory, and 1 from the Magic Emporium. And that's their own separate little loot piles. The way that the rest of the setup works is that there is this bridge deck that sets up like this. And and while both of these cards are its own completely separate region, separate from the dungeon on this side, separate from the city on this side, and separate from the 3 regions going into the middle, this bridge deck only works for the top half. And the mechanics are a little bit different for each. So whether we're at this tunnel space here on the dungeon and we want to decide that we're going to cross over into the city, maybe this is the faster way, or it's the other way around. So like, let's say we were on this side of the city, and we decided that we wanted to go into the dungeon because we felt pretty confident that we could take on the Lord of Darkness, but that we didn't necessarily want to travel all the way across this top row, exit the city, come around, come up, and go through to make it all the way. Because that's just the long ways to go, and that's just not the most efficient way to use turns. So with this expansion, the way it works is that entering is simple. There's these gray arrows, these ginormous gray arrows right here. And you simply roll high enough to get into them. So we could go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. And even if you exceed your dice roll, the way that it works for the top half of the bridge and for the bottom half is that you have to stop in the space you enter, whether it be on the rat run on this side or skull passage on the opposite side. Once you immediately stop, you draw 2 bridge cards and you encounter them. Whether they're objects or enemies, doesn't matter. Once you finish interacting with them, let's say they were enemies and you lost, and they stay on that space, they only stay until the end of your turn and are immediately shuffled right back into play. And then once you succeed in doing so, when it comes around to your turn again, you have the choice to either press on and cross the bridge, or you can roll dice and escape the tunnel. If you decide to press on, you move the 1 space across to rat run, across the bridge, and you draw 2 more bridge cards, and you do the exact same thing. If you're looking for specific things, like maybe there are certain objects that you want to find, you can keep pressing on back and forth and back and forth to draw cards. But once you decide that, okay, we made it across Skull Passage, now we're in Rat Run, and now we want to enter the city, simply roll your die, and you keep moving along your merry way. Now, down here is the tunnel area. The tunnel area has its own deck that's completely separate from the bridge deck. It works the same way when it comes to entering. So there's this cavern space here in the dungeon that you just enter and stop, and you're searching the tunnels. If you're in Thief's Alley over here, you enter the old sewers and you stop. Once you do so, you draw 3 cards, 3 tunnel cards, and you place them right in front of you, and that would end your turn. Each turn that you decide, once it comes back to you, you decide that you want to press on, because you're not scared of anything in the tunnel. You draw the first of those 3 cards that you found in the tunnel, and then you encounter it, interact in whichever way, and then it's discarded. When it comes to your next turn, you decide the same thing. Do you press on? Do you escape? Press on, you draw the next card, and you fight whatever's there. You have to keep going until you get through all 3 tunnel cards. And there are certain events that can reset how long it might take you. Each of their respective areas, over here the old sewers, or over here from the catacombs to the throne room, has their own boosts. So any enemy that classifies as a spirit over on this side adds 1 to their craft, which can be a deadly combo with the Blood Moon if you have it at night. And with the Rat Queen, any rats that you find add 1 to their strength. So here's the last portion when it comes to actually making it. So like we said earlier, each of these, both the Rat Queen and the Wraith Lord, have their own looting piles. The Rat's Nest will consist of 2 cards from the Armory and 1 from Magic Emporium. And the Wraith Lord will have 3 of the 10 treasure decks from the Lord of Darkness. So when you make it to the Rat Queen, the conditions say that fight in battle and have a strength of 3, which isn't very much. But also consider that it's also adding a strength for each and every object that she has on her space. If you lose to the Rat Queen in battle, let's say you decided to come here too early and maybe that fighting the Strength 6 Rat Queen wasn't the best idea, you have to donate 1 of your objects to the Rat Queen in addition to losing a life. And that if you keep losing and you keep losing objects, you will eventually stack up her stats to where she'll almost become impossible to defeat, because she gains a strength for each object that's on her card. If you do win, however, you get to take one of the objects from the Rat Queen. And not only that, but as you come up here, you'll be able to teleport anywhere in the outer and middle region. Same way on the opposite side with the Wraith Lord, if you decided to come this way. Maybe craft is more of your thing. So any spirits that you might find in the catacombs adds one to their craft. You roll and you fight with the Wraith Lord with craft as usual. And for each object on his card, with it being 3 treasure cards, that puts him at a base of a craft of 7 in comparison to the 6 from the Rat Queen. So it's a craft of 7. If you lose, you have to donate one of your objects to him in addition to losing your life. And he increases the stats. If you win, you take one of the treasure cards and you teleport anywhere in the outer and middle region. Simple as that. Overall, this is the bottom half, with the nether deck being optional to play depending on the endings or if we choose to use that. But this kind of makes it easier and has a shortcut with its own little mini bosses and ways to grow from the dungeon to the city or vice versa. This one's a little bit shorter as far as what it actually entails.